You begin in darkness, not the dramatic movie kind with thunder in the background, but the thick, velvety, practical darkness people lived with for most of human history. It hugs your shoulders the moment you open your eyes. You feel the air, cool and faintly dusty, settle around you. Midnight, before electricity, is not a moment. It's a substance. You inhale it like a slow, calming breath you didn't know you needed. Somewhere behind you, a wooden beam creaks, as if the house itself is stretching its limbs, equally tired of holding everything together. You sit up on a lumpy straw mattress, and the first joke of the night reveals itself. People in the past did, in fact, sleep on beds so uneven they made modern budget mattresses feel luxurious. You shift your weight and feel the rustle of dried reeds inside the mattress sack. That's your first sensory reality check. The second is even softer, the faint warmth of someone's breath nearby. You're not alone. Almost nobody in the medieval world slept alone, not unless they were very noble, very wealthy, or very unpopular. The average family shared beds, blankets, room temperatures, and the occasional nighttime elbow to the face. You get lucky tonight. No flying elbows. Around the room, shapes slowly emerge as your eyes adjust. You see a small wooden chest, a chipped jug of water, and a cloak hung over a peg. These aren't decorative. These are survival-level function. Bedrooms weren't sanctuaries. They were places where you collapsed, prayed, snored, and hoped that whatever scurried across the floorboards wasn't something you needed to deal with immediately. And before you ask, yes, rodents were common nighttime companions. Consider them the medieval equivalent of uninvited housemates who never paid rent. You hear a faint shuffle through the wall, someone in the attached room shifting in their sleep. Sound carried easily through these timber frames, and privacy was more of a philosophical idea than a physical reality. Even wealthy households weren't immune to this. At midnight, the world around you doesn't quiet down, it simply changes personality. People didn't sleep in one long stretch back then. Here's your first major historical fact. Segmented sleep was the norm. People slept in two phases, first sleep and second sleep, with a quiet, contemplative hour or two in between. You're waking up right in that dreamy middle zone, the place where time drifts like smoke. You slide your feet onto the wooden floor, instantly cold. The chill climbs your calves like a slow, lazy cat. Somewhere outside, an owl hoots, sounding more irritated with the world than mysterious. You stand, reaching for a small oil lamp on the table. The wick is stiff, barely soaked. You strike a bit of flint, that scrape, that spark, and suddenly, the tiniest bloom of amber light flickers into existence. It's weak, warm, and shockingly meaningful. Because before electricity, any form of light in the night wasn't just a convenience. It was an event. Lamps weren't turned on, they were coaxed awake. The light spills over the room in a buttery halo, catching motes of dust floating like drifting stars. Here's the night's first obscure cultural tidbit. Some households believed it was bad luck to leave a lamp burning while you slept, because wandering spirits might be attracted to the flame. Whether you believe that or not, you appreciate the lamp for what it is. A tiny sun, purchased with oil you really shouldn't waste. You breathe slowly, letting the light settle your nerves. Even the shadows seem to soften. As you stand there, warming your hands around the minuscule heat of the lamp, you hear another sound. A cart creaking softly somewhere down the distant road. Midnight travel wasn't unheard of, though it was risky. People moved under cover of darkness to avoid attention, whether from watchmen, animals, or nosy neighbors. Historians still debate whether night watchmen actually enforced curfews strictly, or just kind of walked around pretending everything was fine. Either way, you're staying put. You draw the cloak around your shoulders, feeling the weight settle like a comforting hand. There's something grounding about it, something ancient and steady. You open a small window hatch to look outside. The world beyond is a deep, charcoal blue ocean of silence. Stars, untouched by urban glare, spill across the sky in thick clusters, as if someone finally remembered to polish the universe. The cold air slips in, soft and sharp at once. You take a long breath and smile faintly. This is midnight before electricity, slow, quiet, heavier, somehow more sincere. You probably won't make it through this day, honestly, but for now, you're doing great. Before we wander further into the night, let me gently remind you, if you enjoy slow journeys like this, you're welcome to like the video and subscribe. It truly helps this sleepy little corner of the internet grow. And if you feel comfortable, comment your location and what time it is where you're watching from. I love seeing how we all meet in the dark from different corners of the world. Now let's ease into tonight's journey. You step away from the window, letting the cool night air slip back into the darkness outside. Inside, the dim lamp continues its patient glow, casting soft amber against the rough wooden walls. You walk slowly, not because you're tired, though you are, but because nobody in this era moved quickly unless something was either on fire or chasing them. Midnight here asks you to move like water. Calm, steady, and slightly unsure of where you're going. Your breath fogs just faintly as you wander toward a small stool near the hearth. The fire has died down hours ago, leaving behind a sleepy bed of embers with the faintest orange pulse. If you crouch close, you can feel a little warmth, like a distant memory. People before electricity, you treated embers with the same respect. We treat phone chargers at 3%. That tiny glow mattered. It meant you wouldn't have to start from scratch in the morning, so you kneel there, hands hovering, appreciating ancient heating systems that were basically hope for the best. You settle on the stool and stretch your legs. This is the in-between time what medieval people called the watch, a pocket of wakefulness that sits quietly between first sleep and second sleep. Nobody thought it was weird. In fact, this was when people prayed, thought, whispered, planned tomorrow, checked on animals, or, if they were feeling ambitious, did very boring household chores. That's your major historical fact for this section. This middle-of-the-night waking was so normal that medical texts and prayer books referenced it as a built-in part of life. You look around the room and catch the soft movement of a shadow near the far wall. It's just someone adjusting under the blankets, but the lamplight flickers dramatically, momentarily making it look like the room is stretching. You blink. The shadow is gone. Medieval houses played constant tricks on the imagination, especially at night, especially when you were half awake. It didn't help that people genuinely believed nighttime was when the veil between worlds got a little flimsy. Ghosts? Spirits? Mischievous fairies? Take your pick. It was like living inside a folklore collection edited by someone who enjoyed jump scares. You shift your weight and the stool groans under you, loud enough that you wince. Suddenly, you remember the thing every medieval person feared during these quiet hours: waking someone else up. Sleep schedules were chaotic enough without you adding your own slapstick soundtrack. You freeze, listening. No one moves. Crisis averted. On the table beside you sits a small bundle wrapped in cloth. Curious, you open it with slow fingers. Inside are dried herbs, lavender, maybe a little rosemary. People hung these in bedrooms, not for aesthetics, but to keep insects and bad smells in check. Here's your obscure cultural tidbit. Some households believed lavender could ward off nighttime demons. Whether it worked or not is unclear, but it definitely helped mask the aroma of several humans sharing one poorly ventilated room. You lift the herbs to your nose. Earthy, calming, a little scratchy, the kind of scent that mixes with old wood and cold air and somehow feels perfect for a night like this. You place them back gently. Somewhere outside, a church bell tolls the hour. One single, lonely note. The bell at night wasn't just a clock, it was reassurance. A reminder that the world was still spinning, that someone was keeping watch, that midnight wasn't a void. Historians still debate whether these bells were rung consistently every hour or only during certain liturgical seasons. But for the sake of your nerves, we're going with, yes, it's intentional. You pull the cloak, tighter, and lean back, allowing your body to soften. The stool is unforgiving, but the quiet is a companion. You listen to the sighs of the house, the distant hoot of an owl, the faint rumble of someone's snore like a soft, accidental trumpet. You smile. There's comfort in these small sounds. They're evidence that life continues even when sight fails. You glance again at the lamp. The flame wavers, struggling against the draft sneaking through the shutters. You cup your hand around it instinctively. Before electricity, this tiny flame was not romantic background lighting. It was your lifeline. Losing it meant stumbling blindly or sitting in total darkness. contemplating all the questionable folklore creatures your neighbors told you about. You rise slowly and wander toward the door, placing your ear against the wooden plank. Outside, the night breathes. No footsteps, no shouts, just quiet. The kind of quiet that presses gently on your skin. You step back and let your shoulders drop. Maybe you should return to bed soon. Maybe second sleep is calling you. But not yet. Midnight still has a few soft secrets to show you. You walk back to the stool, sit, and let your eyes follow the slow dance of the lamp flame. This moment, just you, the cool air, the shifting shadows, is exactly how countless people spent their nights. Not dramatic, not spooky, just peacefully awake in a world that moved on a much slower clock. You breathe in, let yourself sink deeper into the stillness, and wait gently for what the night brings next. You rise from the stool again, feeling pins and needles prick your feet after sitting too long on a piece of furniture that could generously be described as purely theoretical comfort. You stretch your arms overhead, joints cracking softly in the cold air. The lamp flickers when you move, as if protesting the sudden burst of energy. You approach the door of the small home, resting your hand on the rough wooden surface. Curiosity pulls you, that quiet middle-of-the-night urge that made medieval people wander, pray, write, stir stews, or rethink all their life choices. For you, it's a gentle nudge to step outside. You lift the latch slowly, quietly, because waking the entire household by squeaking a door open at midnight would earn you several centuries' worth of annoyed stares. The night greets you with a breath of cold that feels almost alive, brushing your cheeks with a light, icy kiss. You step out into a narrow street, paved unevenly, with stones polished by years of footsteps, carts, rain, and whatever the locals spilled. There, you don't want to know. The darkness is nearly complete. The houses on either side lean inward slightly, their upper beams creating a claustrophobic canopy above the lane. Even the stars struggle to squeeze through the wooden silhouettes. You take a slow step forward, your feet echoing faintly against the stones. Here's your major historical fact for this section. Medieval towns had the official night watchman, one part guard, one part alarm system, one part human deterrent to shenanigans. They patrolled streets with lanterns, long wooden staffs, and the solemn confidence of men who had absolutely no idea how effective they were but were committed to the bit. You walk deeper into the lane, lamp in hand. Somewhere far off, you hear the faint tap-tap of a watchman's staff hitting the ground rhythmically. It's not a threatening sound, more like the world's softest metronome keeping the town in time. People found comfort in it. Others found it annoying. You just find it reassuring, like someone watching over the dark where your own eyes fail. Then, from the shadows to your left, something rustles. You freeze. Your lamp flame shivers. Your brain whispers, "It's probably nothing," while your imagination whispers, "Or it's everything you don't want to meet right now." You wait. A shape emerges, small, quick, unimpressed by your panic. A cat. Medieval. Cats roamed freely, not as beloved pets, but as half-wild neighbors who tolerated humans because barns were warm and mice existed. The cat stares at you as if judging your life choices. You stare back, trying to look authoritative. It blinks slowly, then trots away like you've failed a test you didn't study for. Behind it, in the distant dark, you hear the flutter of wings, night birds hunting, completely at home in the shadows. The medieval world at midnight was full of creatures you rarely saw during the day. Foxes, owls, wandering dogs, sometimes even wolves on the outskirts. It was like nature clocked in for the night shift, the moment the sun went down. You walk further until you reach the town's small marketplace, silent and empty. Stalls, covered with cloth, look like sleeping animals huddling together for warmth. You run your hand along one of the wooden counters. Cold, slightly damp from the night air. This place will be full of noise and life at dawn, bakers shouting, prices, children darting between tables, merchants complaining dramatically about taxes, but now it rests. Night has its own rhythm. You pause as you notice a peculiar object dangling from the corner of one stall. A bundle of dried garlic tied with twine. Not for cooking, at least not exclusively. Here's your obscure cultural tidbit. Some medieval families hung garlic outside their doors at night, believing it repelled not just illness, but wandering spirits or malevolent forces. You can't tell whether this stall belongs to a cautious family, a superstitious one, or someone who really hates bland food. You continue walking, letting the darkness guide you. Above, the moon hangs pale and disinterested, half hidden behind drifting clouds. Without street lamps, the moon mattered. People planned their travel, their chores, even their security around its phases. A bright moon meant you could see your path. A new moon meant you tried not to leave your house unless absolutely necessary. Historians still debate how strictly night travel was discouraged, but judging by how pitch black this street gets when a cloud slides over the moon, staying home seems like the sensible option. As you pass between two houses, your lamp suddenly sputters. You bring it closer to your chest, shielding it from the cold breeze. The flame steadies but shrinks. This is the part of the night where you suddenly appreciate modern light switches, and maybe even streetlights you once complained were too bright. Back then, lamps required oil. Oil cost money. And people learned the hard way not to waste it. So you walk carefully, every step deliberate, like you're trying not to annoy the darkness. You reach a small bridge, arching over a canal that looks completely black in the night. The water reflects nothing, swallowing your lamp glow whole. You lean on the wooden railing, feeling how rough and splinter-prone it is. The world feels impossibly still. A few night insects chirp softly, their tiny voices echoing in the emptiness. It's strangely peaceful. Then there it is again, the distant tap-tap of the watchman's staff. Closer this time. You straighten up instinctively, not because you're doing anything wrong, but because humans have always felt suspiciously guilty when authority appears unexpectedly. You wait as the figure approaches. A man wrapped in a heavy cloak, carrying a lantern that sways with each step. His face is half hidden, but he nods politely as he passes. "Quiet night," he murmurs. You nod back, trying to look like someone who isn't weirdly wandering alone at midnight with herbs in your pocket. The watchman continues on, disappearing into the shadows with the soft rhythm of his staff. You breathe easier. The night opens around you again, calm and deep. You step off the bridge and begin making your way back toward home, lamp held close. Midnight is settling heavier now, like a blanket being tucked in. There's more to see tonight, but you'll ease into it slowly. You return from the silent street with careful steps, the lamp's small flame dancing with each movement. The air near the house feels slightly warmer, as if the walls themselves remember the heat still trapped inside. You lift the latch gently and slip back indoors, closing the door without a sound. The room greets you like a sleepy friend, dim, quiet, layered with the familiar scent of wood smoke and linen. Inside, your eyes adjust quickly. The faint orange embers in the hearth glow like the warm pulse of a creature resting. Your footsteps soften on the wooden floor as you approach it. The warmth is subtle, barely there, but still comforting. You kneel and pick up the iron poker. One gentle nudge sends a small shower of sparks drifting upward like sleepy fireflies stretching their wings. You sit back, feeling oddly proud. Congratulations. You've just performed one of the most important tasks of medieval midnight survival, tending the fire without waking anyone. Here's your major historical fact for this section. Medieval households often banked their fires before bed, covering embers with ash to keep them alive until morning. Rekindling a fire from nothing was miserable, time-consuming, and depended on flint, tinder, and sheer stubbornness. A warm ember meant a faster morning, a warmer meal, and one less reason to curse the universe. You look to your left and notice the household dog curled up near the hearth. You didn't see it earlier because it was buried so deeply in sleep that it looked like part of the rug. The dog lifts its head now, gives you a long, judgmental blink, then sighs and goes back to sleep with the dedication of a true professional. Dogs were nighttime guardians, warmth donors, and early warning alarms for suspicious sounds. Dogs raised in medieval towns knew everything about nighttime life. Who walked where, which neighbor snored loudest, and exactly how many cats considered themselves above the law. Behind you, a soft rustle. Someone shifts under the blankets, murmuring something unintelligible. You pause. In these cramped households, even your breathing could wake someone if it felt dramatic enough. You resume tending the hearth with exaggerated gentleness, every movement slow and padded with silence. You rise and walk toward the small table by the wall. On it rests a modest wooden bowl, a chipped cup, and a candle stub barely the length of your thumb. You consider lighting it, but one look at the nearly non-existent wick and you decide against it. People guarded candles like we guard phone batteries, only in emergencies, only when necessary, and never ever just because you wanted ambiance. You run your fingers along the edge of the bowl as if expecting it to reveal something. Instead, you uncover tonight's obscure cultural tidbit. In some regions, people left small offerings of bread or a pinch of grain on their tables overnight, believing household spirits, brownies, kobolds, domovoi, depending on location, would protect the home in return. Feeding your invisible roommate was just good etiquette. You glance around, no sign of a spirit collecting rent or rearranging furniture. But you do see a few crumbs left intentionally near the bowl. Maybe someone in the house believes. Maybe it's just habit. Maybe it's a hopeful precaution, like locking a window you aren't sure thieves would ever care about. Another sound reaches you, a soft thump from outside. The dog's ears twitch, but it doesn't rise. You tilt your head, listening. Just the wind knocking against a loose shutter. You feel your shoulders relax. Historians still debate how noisy medieval nights truly were, whether these sounds were normal background ambiance or genuine cause for concern. But either way, tonight seems calm. You pour yourself a small cup of water from the jug. The water is cool, slightly metallic, tasting faintly of the jug's clay interior. You take a slow sip, letting it settle on your tongue. Even drinking water feels different without glare from electric bulbs. Shadows soften everything, turning basic tasks into quiet rituals. You sit on the edge of the bed, cloak wrapped around your shoulders. The mattress sighs under your weight. The family beside you remains asleep, breathing in a slow, synchronized rhythm that makes you feel oddly peaceful. The lamp's glow rests against the far wall, turning the rough wooden boards into honey-colored stripes. You lie back for a moment, staring at the rafters above thick beams overhead, dark with age, slightly warped. You imagine each beam holding centuries of whispers, prayers, arguments, spilled wine, and very questionable interior design decisions. The house feels alive, not metaphorically, but functionally. It creaks as the temperature drops. It settles as people shift. It breathes as wind squeezes through the gaps. Your eyes drift toward the small slit window. The moonlight filters through faintly, illuminating the tiny particles of dust floating in the lamp's glow. You watch them drift like tiny planets orbiting an invisible sun. Midnight slow motion. You feel your body getting heavier. Not tired exactly, just softened. This is the perfect hour for quiet reflection, which medieval people often used for prayer, journaling, or whispering plans for the next day. You, however, settle for simply existing. No noise, no urgency, no notifications. Just the world humming gently beneath you. You close your eyes for a moment, listening to the room. The dog's soft snore, the faint whistle of wind through the shutter, the distant church bell marking another quarter hour. The night is deep, but not empty. Midnight before electricity is unfolding at its own pace, and there's still more waiting quietly in the dark. You open your eyes again not because something startled you, but because midnight has a way of nudging you awake just when your body begins to melt into rest. This in-between place feels soft, like your mind is floating just a few inches above your body. You sit up slowly, careful not to disturb the sleeping figures beside you. The lamp has burned low, its flame shrinking to a tiny golden bead, but still clinging to life with stubborn determination. You rise, stretch your shoulders, and wrap the cloak tighter around your body. The air feels colder now, as if the night has settled deeper into the bones of the house. You step quietly to the door again, drawn by curiosity or maybe the quiet hum of the world beyond the walls. Midnight before electricity wasn't a time of stillness. It was a time of subtle motion, half-hidden routines, and whispered rhythms. You slip outside once more, blinking at the darkness. Your lamp gives off only the faintest glow now, more suggestion than illumination. You lift it anyway, because even the smallest light feels like a companion. The village street stretches before you in muted tones, dark roofs sloping into deeper shadows, chimneys standing like watchful sentinels, and the occasional window shutter rattling in the wind. You walk with deliberate steps, feeling every stone beneath your feet. Your breath forms tiny ghosts in the air. You glance at the house next door and notice something subtle. a faint ribbon of light seeping through a thin gap beneath the door. Not bright enough to be a candle, more likely a small oil lamp like yours, burning just enough to keep someone awake through their first to second sleep intermission. Here's your major historical fact for this section. Medieval people often used this quiet, wakeful period for tasks they couldn't easily do during daylight. Farmers woke to check animals. Mothers fed babies, or prepared dough for the morning. Men and women prayed, studied scripture, or even visited neighbors. Night wasn't a dead time, it was a quiet shift between the loud ones. You walk past the neighbor's house, hearing the faintest sound, murmured voices, two people, speaking softly. They aren't arguing, they aren't laughing, just talking, sharing thoughts, maybe fears, maybe gossip about who forgot to bring in their firewood again. Midnight conversations had an intimacy modern life rarely recreates. You move on, heading toward the communal well at the center of the village. The bucket and rope hang motionless in the dark. You approach and place your hand on the wooden beam. It's damp and cold, slick with the chill of the night. You imagine people gathering here early in the morning, half asleep, clutching water jugs and muttering about chores. But now, the well is a sleeping giant. You lean in, listening to the soft echo of water far below. A gentle drip reaches your ears, steady, rhythmic, reassuring. You pull back and laugh silently to yourself. You didn't expect to find comfort in well acoustics, but here you are. As you walk away, you pass by a small wooden shed. Something inside moves slowly, softly. You pause. A sleepy goat bleats once, sounding offended that you dared to exist near its bedtime. You whisper an apology and keep walking before it decides to wake the entire barnyard. You continue down the lane until you reach the chapel. It's small, humble, with a crooked steeple that looks like it had one too many hard winters. A tiny candle glows through the window. Someone is awake inside. You approach the door and listen. A voice murmurs a quiet prayer. Maybe the priest. Maybe someone seeking comfort. Prayer at midnight wasn't unusual. This hour was believed to be spiritually potent. People used it to confess doubts, soothe worries, or seek protection for the rest of the night. And here's your obscure cultural tidbit. Some believed that dreams coming after second sleep were more prophetic, more meaningful. So, naturally, people sometimes prayed specifically for good dreams before going back to bed, as if ordering custom dream content from the medieval universe. You step back from the chapel, feeling a strange sense of peace settle around you. Even if the world outside is dark and cold, someone is always awake. Someone is praying, walking, tending, whispering. Midnight wasn't a lonely time, it was simply a quieter, gentler layer of life. You walk toward the far end of the village where the fields begin. The smell of soil and frost mixes in the air, earthy and sharp. You stop at the wooden fence and look out over the open land. It's vast, black, and impossibly silent. Without electricity, the night swallowed everything beyond the reach of your lamp. Historians still debate whether people truly feared the dark or simply accepted it as part of life. You stand there now, feeling a faint thrill at how intimidating the night can be and an equal comfort in knowing people lived this way for generations. A breeze slips past you, cold and gentle. You turn back toward the village, watching the clustered rooftops settling deeper into sleep. The faint glow under the neighbor's door has dimmed. The chapel candle flickers softly. Even the goat has lost interest in your existence. You take a long breath and begin your walk back home, the lamp trembling slightly in your hand. Midnight is shifting, leaning toward its softer, sleepier half. You can feel it in the air, in your limbs, in the quiet stretching of the world around you. There's more to discover before dawn pulls the curtain back, but you'll step into it gently. You return to the house once more, easing the door shut behind you until it clicks quietly into place. The dim lamp in your hand flickers with the movement, stretching shadows across the room like sleepy silhouettes performing a slow-motion dance. Everyone inside is still asleep, their soft, uneven breathing blending into a single, peaceful hum. Even the dog hasn't bothered to lift its head this time. That's how you know the night is settling deep. You place the lamp on the table and rub your hands together for warmth. Midnight, before electricity, wasn't just dark, it was cold, in a way that wrapped itself around your bones like a clingy cat demanding attention. You decide to move toward the small corner of the room that functions as the kitchen. Kitchen is a generous term, considering it's really just a wooden table, a few tools, and a shelf holding a questionable collection of pots that have seen more centuries than they deserve. You brush your fingers over the rough tabletop, feeling crumbs clinging to the surface. Someone must have eaten earlier bread, probably. Bread played the role of both meal and utensil, and in some very creative moments, furniture padding. You spot a small loaf wrapped in cloth, hard, dense, and very likely capable of knocking someone unconscious if thrown with enough force. You slice a piece off anyway, listening to the dull crunch of the blade. It's not soft, but the taste is warm and familiar. Here's your major historical fact for this section. People often use the time between first and second sleep to snack. Not lavish meals, just small bites of cold bread, leftover stew, maybe ale if they were feeling rebellious or thirsty. Midnight meals existed long before microwave burritos, though the texture of the bread suggests microwaves would have been invented faster if anyone had to deal with this daily. You chew quietly as you move through the space. The cloak around your shoulders feels heavier now. Not uncomfortable, just grounding. The moonlight sneaks in through the small window slit, casting a faint silver stripe across the floorboards. You follow that stripe, stepping softly, careful not to bump into the wide-legged stool that lurks like a booby trap waiting for unsuspecting toes. You crouch near the hearth again, feeding the embers a small piece of wood. It crackles once, a tiny sound that feels louder in the silence than it should. The fire catches slowly, offering a little heat. You sit cross-legged near it, enjoying the soft warmth spreading toward your hands. The glow makes the room feel a touch more alive, as though the house is exhaling contentedly. As you sit there, your eyes land on a clay pot tucked in a corner. You pull it closer and lift the lid. Inside are dried peas, not the glamorous highlight of medieval cuisine, but practical. You swirl your hand gently through them, feeling the smooth, cool surfaces under your fingers. People stored food wherever it fit on shelves, under beds, in pots, even inside hollow beams. Kitchens weren't pristine spaces of culinary creativity. They were storage units for survival. You set the pot back down and notice a small wooden spoon leaning against it. The spoon's handle is worn smooth from years of stirring, scraping, and possibly being used as an emergency fly swatter. The faint smell of old barley porridge clings to it, as if the spoon itself remembers every breakfast it ever helped make. You stand and wander over to the wall where several herbs hang upside down. Rosemary, thyme, and what might be mugwort, or possibly just a plant someone was 70% sure wasn't poisonous. Here's your obscure cultural tidbit. Mugwort was often placed near beds or burned during the night because people believed it protected against nightmares. A medieval nightlight, but smokier. You lean close to the herbs, inhaling their dry, crisp scent. It mixes with the faint ash smell from the hearth and the cool air drifting through the shutters. It feels ancient and cleansing, as if you've inhaled centuries of quiet wisdom plus a bit of dust. A sudden creak pulls your attention. The floorboard behind you complains loudly as someone stirs in their sleep. You freeze, spoon still in hand, like a thief caught in the act of stealing absolutely nothing. You wait. The breathing settles. No one wakes. You let out a breath of relief. Historians still debate whether nightly noises were comforting or annoying in shared households. Judging by how tense you just got, annoying feels like the correct answer, but then again, this is part of the life you're learning to move within. Every house had its own soundtrack. Creaks, snores, shifting blankets, wind slipping through cracks. You take a few steps toward the small wooden chest near the sleeping area. You lift the lid softly and peek inside. Simple clothing, folded neatly. Woolen garments made for warmth, not style. A pair of socks knitted with more love than symmetry. A belt with a buckle slightly bent from years of use. Everything in this chest has a story, but each story is practical, worn, and necessary. You lower the lid gently and sit back on the bed, letting the cloak fall loosely around your shoulders. The weight of the night presses softly upon you, not oppressive, just present. The lamp on the table quivers again, its flame thinning. You lean forward and adjust the wick, coaxing it back into shape. The flame responds, swelling into a steadier glow. The world beyond the walls is quiet now. Even the owl seems to have given up its commentary. Midnight is drifting into its most sacred stillness, the hour where nothing is urgent, nothing loud, and life breathes slowly beside you. You lie back again on the rough mattress, listening to the house, feeling the fire pulse, smelling the herbs, tasting the last crumbs of dense bread. The darkness wraps around you like a soft blanket woven from time itself. There is more to this night, more quiet rituals, more whispered histories, more strange comforts waiting in the dim hours before dawn. But for now, you let yourself rest, suspended in the gentle hush of a world without electricity. You drift awake again, not fully, not sharply, but the way a leaf turns when a breeze brushes past it. The room is darker now, the lamp nearly extinguished, holding on to life with the stubborn energy of someone refusing to leave a party, even after the host has put the chairs on the tables. The flame trembles, shrinks, steadies, then trembles again. You sit up slowly, rubbing your eyes, feeling a pleasant heaviness in your limbs. You can sense the shift in the house. Everyone is still asleep, but their breathing has grown deeper, richer people sinking into the thick syrup of second sleep. You haven't slipped into yours yet. That quiet wakefulness between sleep still lingers, offering you a chance to exist without needing to do anything. Midnight is settling deeper, like ink soaking into fabric. You step away from the bed, moving with the same exaggerated caution as someone trying not to wake a baby or a cat, both equally dangerous in different ways. Your feet touch the cold floor, and the chill flows up your legs like a slow wave. You shiver, but not enough to retreat. Something about the night invites wandering thoughts, and wandering thoughts invite wandering feet. You walk toward the small window slit again, opening the shutter just enough to let a streak of moonlight spill into the room. It paints a silver path across the floor and up your arm, turning your skin pale and ghost-like. The world outside looks carved from darkness, houses leaning, roofs slanted, chimneys outlined like chalk sketches. Everything is silent, except the faint roll of wind through distant branches. Here's your major historical fact for this section. Medieval people didn't just lie awake between first and second sleep. They often thought deeply. Philosophers, farmers, and everyday folk all used this time for reflection. Letters written in the early hours reveal people pondering debts, love, faith, weather, dreams, and whether their neighbor stole that missing chicken. Midnight wasn't idle, it was contemplative. You sit on the stool near the window and rest your elbows on the rough wood. The moonlight brushes, your face like cool fingertips. Your mind drifts without effort. The questions that float up are soft, harmless ones. What time is it? What will morning feel like? Did the goat forgive you? Will the embers still be warm? Can you go through an entire night without tripping over that stool? Historians still debate your odds. A small sound interrupts your thoughts, a faint scraping noise from beneath the floorboards. You freeze, you listen. The sound happens again. Slow, scritch, scritch. You brace yourself. Then the tiniest little mouse pops out near the wall, pauses dramatically, and stares up at you as if demanding to know why you're awake at its hour. You stare back, two creatures of the night, deeply confused by each other. It scurries away, squeaking indignantly, probably to file a formal complaint. You exhale slowly, half relieved, half embarrassed. You are startled by something that weighs less than your smallest spoon. You turn back to the window, letting the silence return. The moon has slipped behind clouds now, dimming the room until your lamp becomes the brighter presence again. You rise and walk toward it, cupping your hand around the weak flame. It wavers but holds. Poor thing is working overtime tonight. You reach into the small clay container of oil beside it, dipping a finger to gently moisten the wick. The flame strengthens. Not dramatically, no fireworks, no spotlight, just a steady, patient glow. Enough to feel like company. Here's your obscure cultural tidbit. Medieval people sometimes believed that staring into a flame during the quiet hours could reveal symbolic truths or spark meaningful dreams. The tiny fire wasn't just light. It was a doorway. Whether or not that's true, the lamp certainly gives your mind something to hold on to besides the darkness. You sit on the floor, cross-legged, watching the flame whisper and bend. The warmth is minimal, but the comfort is undeniable. Your thoughts drift again, not sharply, not urgently, but like soft clouds drifting across a night sky. You think about the people sleeping beside you, how their days are shaped by sun, season, and survival. You think about how differently the world moves without the glare of electric light or the hum of machines. Midnight is slower, thicker, more deliberate. Historians still debate whether people genuinely enjoyed these quiet hours or simply endured them. Some sources say they found peace in the hush. Others suggest it was inconvenient but necessary. But sitting here now, you feel a gentle gratitude for this soft interruption of time. Your eyes begin to grow heavier. Your muscles loosen. Your shoulders drop an inch. The world feels a little blurrier at the edges, in that pleasant, drifting way that tells you second sleep is approaching like a slow tide. You stand, stretch, and move back to the bed. The mattress rustles softly as you settle into it. The cloak wraps around you like a cocoon. The dog shifts once in its sleep, letting out a single, confused boof, then sighs contentedly. You close your eyes. Midnight is fading, and the deeper hours of the night are waiting for you, patient and quiet. You drift back into wakefulness again, though just barely, like someone nudged your mind instead of your body. Your eyes open to a darkness that feels thicker now, richer, like ink pooling in the corners of the room. The lamp has finally surrendered. No flame, no glow, just a faint curl of smoke rising from the wick. The only light is the pale moon filtering through the window slit in thin, hesitant stripes. You lie still for a moment, listening. The room has changed its rhythm. Earlier, the house breathed slowly. Now it murmurs, shifts, hums with the small, unconscious movements of shared sleep. A foot brushes against a blanket. Someone exhales sharply, then settles. A child sighs. The dog stretches its legs in a dream, thumping the floor once before going boneless again. You sit up carefully, blanket rustling, under your hands. This is the hour when sleep becomes sweeter, deeper, and much more chaotic if you're sharing a bed with multiple humans. Here's your major historical fact for this section. Medieval people regularly slept in groups, not just couples, but families, visiting guests, children, sometimes even servants. Privacy was not a nighttime priority. Warmth and safety were. You shift your weight and immediately regret it. The mattress beneath you dips in unpredictable ways, sending your hip sinking into a crater that wasn't there earlier. Medieval bedding wasn't engineered. It simply existed. You adjust again, hoping to find a spot that doesn't feel like a soft pit or a lumpy hill. No luck. You slide off the bed to stretch your legs. As soon as your feet touch the floor, the cold shoots up your legs like a startled squirrel scrambling for safety. You inhale sharply. Someone grumbles behind you in their sleep, either annoyed at the cold air you just let in under the blanket, or simply dreaming about something mildly disappointing, like underbaked bread. You stand still, waiting for the household to settle again. The silence returns a moment later. You take a step toward the hearth, navigating around the unpredictable floorboard you've learned to avoid like a medieval landmine. You crouch near the faintly glowing embers. They've dimmed significantly, but a few pulses of warmth remain. You cup your hands around them, absorbing whatever heat they still give. It's faint but comforting. As you stare at the ember bed, you notice something odd, tucked beside the stones, a smooth river rock, out of place. You pick it up, turning it in your fingers. It's warm. Someone must have heated it earlier and wrapped it in cloth to use as a primitive bedtime warmer. Here's your obscure cultural tidbit. Heated stones were sometimes placed in beds during winter nights to warm the sheets. Medieval hot water bottles, minus the water in the bottle. Simple. Technology. Excellent results. You feel a quiet appreciation for whoever thought to place it there. A soft thud echoes from somewhere above just once, just enough to get your attention. The rafters creak, wind moans softly outside. The house settles again. You raise an eyebrow at the ceiling, but decide you're not brave enough or awake enough to inspect the source. Whatever it was, you assume it was wind, and if it wasn't, you choose denial. Denial is an ancient coping mechanism. Historians still debate how much nighttime noise medieval people tolerated, especially from animals living in roof spaces like pigeons, sparrows, or uninvited tenants that shall not be named. But judging from this moment, the answer seems to be quite a lot. You walk toward the window slit and pull it open slightly. Fresh air drifts in cold, sharp, carrying the scent of frost and distant wood smoke. You lean your forehead against the wooden frame. Outside, the world looks like it has stopped, breathing. The stars above hang motionless, and the village sleeps in a deep hush. You wonder how midnight could feel so still and yet so alive. Behind you, a small cough snaps you back. Someone rolls onto their side, taking most of the blanket hostage in the process. You watch the blanket migrate like a slow, determined glacier. You can practically hear the internal monologue. Mine now. You stifle a laugh. Shared sleep wasn't just practical, it was a nightly negotiation of personal space. A negotiation no one ever won. You step back from the window and rub your hands together again. The air in the room feels even colder now. You reach for the cloak draped over the stool and wrap it tightly around yourself. The weight grounds you. The wool scratches faintly at your neck, comforting in a very medieval way. As you walk back toward the bed, you pause beside the small chest. Not to open it, just to rest your hand on it. The wood feels cool, sturdy. Everything in this room feels sturdy, practical, built to survive winters, storms, time. You slip under the blanket again, gently tugging a portion back from the person currently hogging it. They yield without waking an act of sleep diplomacy. The mattress sighs under your weight, adjusting itself around you. You sink into its strange landscape, feeling the familiar lumps and hollows like landmarks you've grown to know. Your eyes grow heavy again. The house's nighttime melody returns. Breaths, creaks, distant wind, the faint whisper of embers. You let yourself melt into it. Midnight is deep now, dark as ink, soft as wool, and the world holds you quietly. Second sleep will come soon, and the deepest hours of the night are still unfolding around you, gently and slowly. You open your eyes once more, but this time the darkness feels different, thicker, heavier, almost velvety. This is the deep night hour, the one that sits just before the world even thinks about morning. Your vision adjusts slowly, revealing faint outlines. The sloping rafters above, the faint rise and fall of sleeping bodies, the small cluster of dried herbs swaying gently where they hang from the ceiling beam. Everything feels softer now. Even your thoughts feel padded, like someone wrapped them in wool for safekeeping. You shift slightly on the mattress, and the straw inside responds with a sleepy rustle. The dog beside the hearth emits a low, drowsy grunt, then stretches out a paw that lands squarely on someone's leg. That someone mumbles an incoherent sentence that sounds like an argument with bread dough, turns over, and slips right back into sleep. This is the kind of chaos only a house full of sleeping humans can make, quiet, messy, endearing. You sit up, pulling the blanket aside, and place your feet on the cold floor. The chill hits you with surprising enthusiasm, racing up your legs like an overly energetic squirrel. You suppress a shiver and stand, letting your cloak fall around your shoulders like a heavy, warm shadow. Your lamp, long extinguished, sits lonely on the table. You touch the clay base, cold, empty, completely done with its shift. You decide to leave it alone. Some things deserve to sleep too. You move toward the hearth again and crouch beside the fading embers. They're little more than dim, glowing freckles now. You rake them gently with a stick until a soft, warm glow reappears. Enough to see by. Enough to warm your hands. Enough to remind you that fire never really disappears, just hides. Here's your major historical fact for this section. Medieval households often woke briefly during these deep night hours to check the fire, especially in winter. Letting the hearth die completely could mean hours of frustration in the dark morning, and the cold inside the house could become dangerous before sunrise. Fire maintenance was not cozy, it was survival. You sit beside the embers, watching the faint orange glow pulse under the ash like a slow heartbeat. The sound of wind against the shutters softens, replaced by a strange, subtle quiet from outside, a kind of stillness that feels like the entire world has paused. You stand and walk to the door, opening it just a crack. Outside, the village is wrapped in pure darkness. No torches, no lamps, no windows glowing. Nothing but black silhouettes of buildings, cut from the sky like jagged pieces of ink. The moon has vanished behind thick clouds, leaving no silver trace behind it. This kind of darkness is rare in the modern world. A true absence of light. You step outside and inhale sharply. The air is colder than before, sharper, more metallic, carrying the faint scent of frost settling onto rooftops and soil. The night feels ancient, untouched. Even your own breath seems too loud. Your foot brushes something on the ground. You look down and see the small wooden bucket someone left beside the door earlier. You step around it. It would be a tragic fate to die at midnight because you tripped over a bucket. You wander toward the center of the village again, moving slow, careful, letting your feet learn the stones under them. Every sound seems amplified. The faint rustle of your cloak, the whisper of wind, the distant creak of a tree limb shifting under the weight of the night. Here's your obscure cultural tidbit. In many medieval regions, people believed the deepest part of the night was when supernatural beings were most active, not malicious, just present. Spirits, fair folk, wandering ancestors, even omens. Whether you believe any of that or not, the silence around you feels like a story waiting to be told. You reach the well again and rest your hands on the chilled beam. You lean over carefully. The echo of water below is different, now slower, deeper, as if the well itself is dreaming. A soft sound catches your ear. Footsteps. Slow, steady, approaching from behind. You turn, heart doing a small but dramatic hop. A figure approaches in the dark, thick cloak, heavy steps. You tense. Then the watchman's lantern flares faintly as he lifts it. The light reveals a tired face, eyes half-lidded, beard a little frosty. He nods once. "Quiet night," he whispers. It's the same exact phrase he said earlier, but now it carries a sleepy, resigned poetry. You nod back. He continues on, steps echoing until they fade into the night. You feel a strange comfort knowing someone else occupies this hour with you. Historians still debate how strict night watchmen were, how often they patrolled, or how seriously they took their duties. But the deep night watch had its own rhythm. Not vigilance, presence. A person in the night so the village didn't feel entirely alone. You linger at the well for another moment, feeling the silence settle around your shoulders. Then you turn back toward the house, feet moving instinctively, drawn by warmth and the soft promise of second sleep. Inside, the air meets you like a familiar blanket. You shut the door quietly behind you, slip back toward the bed, and nestle into your small corner of the mattress. The blanket is still warm from the bodies pressed against it. You pull it up to your chin, close your eyes, and listen to the soft breathing around you. Your body relaxes almost instantly, sinking into the sleep-laden stillness. The deepest part of the night holds you now. Second sleep rises slowly behind your eyelids, and the long journey toward dawn continues, soft and unhurried. You wake again, but this time it happens gently, like floating upward through warm water. Your mind arrives before your body does, drifting into awareness while your limbs still feel tethered to dreams. The darkness hasn't changed much, but it feels different now, softer, less like a curtain, and more like a warm blanket, stretched across the village. You inhale slowly. The room smells faintly of wool, ash, and sleep-warm bodies. Someone beside you murmurs something in a dream, something about a misplaced shoe, or possibly a sheep with opinions. You're not sure. Medieval dream logic doesn't always translate well. You roll onto your back, feeling the uneven mattress shift beneath you. The straw inside has rearranged itself again, creating new hills and new valleys in your personal sleeping geography. You've almost gotten used to it. Almost. A particularly stubborn lump under your shoulder blade reminds you that comfort, in this era, was an optional luxury. Your eyes adjust to the tiny bit of light seeping through the window slit. Dawn is still nowhere near arriving, but the sky has begun its almost imperceptible lightening the moment, where the night hasn't changed, but you can sense its eventual retreat. This is when second sleep begins, that deep, restorative stretch that carried medieval people into morning. And you're right on the cusp of slipping into it, but not just yet. You sit up slowly, cloak sliding off your shoulders in a soft cascade of fabric. You rub your hands together, feeling the cold settle into your knuckles. The embers in the hearth have faded to the faintest glow, like the memory of heat rather than heat itself. You crouch beside them again, nudging them gently with a stick. No new sparks this time. The fire has truly fallen asleep. You wrap your cloak tighter around yourself and accept that the next few hours will be cold unless someone decides to rebuild the fire at dawn. Here's your major historical fact for this section. Second sleep wasn't just a continuation of the first, it was a deeper, dream-rich period, often filled with vivid imagery. Many medieval writings describe meaningful dreams, occurring specifically during this second stretch of rest, believed to be influenced by the quiet, the reflection of the midnight hours. You rise from the hearth and stretch, feeling the stiffness easing out of your back. As you move through the room, careful not to bump into furniture that seems specially designed to attack shins, you notice something odd. The dog is awake. It lifts its head, ears perked, staring at you with that universal canine expression of, "Why are you up? Is food happening? No? Then why are you up?" You give it a gentle pat on the head. It sighs and collapses back into sleep instantly. That's the kind of confidence you aspire to. You step toward the window and push the shutter open just a hair. Cold air slips in, brushing your face with the faintest hint of moisture. Outside, the world is absolutely still, so still that even the frost seems to be holding its breath. The fields beyond the village are shrouded in darkness, but a pale sheen of moonlight reveals the silvery outline of frost gathering on the ground. The rooftops glisten faintly. Somewhere far, off, an animal shifts, maybe a cow or a sheep turning in its sleep. The sound carries across the fields like a tiny echo wrapped in cotton. You close the shutter softly and turn back into the room. Someone behind you lets out a long, dramatic snore. You smile. Shared sleeping arrangements meant you often learned more about your companions than you ever asked to. Nighttime noises, sleep talking, blanket theft techniques. It was all part of the medieval sleep experience. Here's your obscure cultural tidbit. Some medieval households believed that a loud snorer was blessed by protective spirits because spirits preferred quiet houses, and anyone making noise was too annoying for them to bother with. So snorers, in theory, scared off danger. Whether the household liked that snorer was another story. You glance around the room again. The shadows seem thicker, but friendlier now. Less like lurking shapes, and more like soft folds in a wool blanket. You feel your body beginning to sink. Again, shoulders drooping, eyelids heavy, thoughts drifting like candle smoke. Second sleep is calling you back, patient and steady. You return to the bed and slip under the blanket, careful not to disturb the delicate peace of the mattress ecosystem. The warmth of shared body heat wraps around you instantly. Your muscles relax in a slow, melting wave. You feel someone beside you shift, pressing their back against yours instinctively, seeking warmth without waking. A small, unconscious human gesture that has existed since the beginning of home and hearth. You let out a soft, contented breath. Historians still debate how regular segmented sleep was across different regions and centuries, but at this moment, lying here in the deep silence before dawn, you understand why people embraced it. The night wasn't something to endure, it was something to move through in layers. Your breathing slows, your thoughts blur, the world drifts, and second sleep begins to pull you downward, gentle as a tide. You return to the surface of consciousness slowly, like someone lifting you from warm water with quiet, careful hands. Your eyes open just a fraction. The room is still dark, but the darkness has changed again, less dense, less absolute. It has softened at the edges, as if it knows dawn is somewhere in the distant future. Already stretching its limbs, you lie still for a moment, feeling your body wrapped in warmth. The shared blanket has shifted again. Someone has rolled closer, someone else has rolled away, and the dog has somehow claimed the warmest spot near the hearth without asking permission. You breathe in deeply. The air carries the faint smell of wool, cool wood, and the last traces of ember dust. You shift your legs slightly, and the straw mattress responds with its signature rustling groan, part complaint, part lullaby. But oddly, it feels more comfortable than it did earlier. Maybe you've adapted. Maybe the mattress has. Maybe the two of you have reached a diplomatic agreement. Your mind drifts in that dreamy, foggy space between sleep and wakefulness. Thoughts appear and fade without logic. Scenes from dreams, half-memories, fragments of imagined conversations. Someone in the bed mumbles something about barley. Someone else coughs once, then settles. The house seems to breathe around you, its wooden bones expanding and contracting in the cold. You slide one arm out from under the blanket. The air meets your skin with a cold kiss, not hostile, just honest. You tuck your hand back in, finding a warm pocket between folds of cloth and someone's elbow. Here's your major historical fact for this section. During second sleep, medieval people often dreamed more vividly. Writers describe this period as a time when the mind opened itself to spiritual messages, deep metaphors, or moral clarity. Whether true or not, The dream-rich nature of this phase was widely acknowledged across households and manuscripts. You close your eyes, again, letting the waves of drowsiness pull you inward. Images arise. Unbidden fields glowing under moonlight, the echo of the watchman's staff tapping against stones, the pale glow of frost on rooftops, the small mouse who judged your midnight existence. They drift like scenes from a lantern show, soft and disconnected, but soothing. You flip to your side, facing the faint outline of the window. The shutter is closed, but a thin line of pale blue-grey light leaks through the edges. Not dawn, just a softer shade of night. A hint that the world hasn't forgotten you. The dog sighs deeply, its entire body deflating like a sack of flour. You smile into your blanket. You've grown strangely attached to the dog's soundtrack of sleep. It's comforting in a way that makes you forget the cold. You let your thoughts wander. You think about how quiet the world is without electricity. Not silent, never silent, but quiet in a deeper, slower way. A quiet that settles into your bones and makes you feel part of the landscape instead of separate from it. Then, suddenly, a small knock. Not loud, not urgent, just a tap. You hold your breath, listening. A second tap follows, softer this time. Then nothing. You wait. The house remains still. Wind. Probably just the wind nudging something outside. Historians still debate whether medieval people experienced more nighttime anxiety because of these ambiguous sounds, or whether they simply shrugged and rolled over. Considering your current level of, "I'm just going to pretend that was the wind," you're beginning to understand why superstition thrived. You stretch your legs again. Your toes brush against someone's foot, which jerks instinctively, then immediately settles back into place. No one wakes. That's the beauty of second sleep. It's thick, deep, and forgiving. Your breathing slows in rhythm with the others. The warmth of the bed pulls you downward again. Your mind quiets. Your muscles soften, uncoiling, like thread. Here's your obscure cultural tidbit. In some regions, people believed the dreams from second sleep revealed truths about their future health, harvests, or emotional well-being. Some even recorded them upon waking, turning dream diaries into unofficial weather forecasts. You smile faintly. If you were to record your dreams tonight, you'd probably end up predicting the future behavior of goats or the stability of wooden stools. Not exactly prophetic, but honest. Your eyes flutter closed. The house settles. The night deepens once more. You drift fully into second sleep, now slow, warm, suspended, and the world holds you gently, as it has for centuries. You surface again slowly, gently, like mist, lifting off a quiet field at first light. Your eyes stay closed for a moment, as your mind settles into that warm, blurry space where dreams cling to you like soft cobwebs. You can't remember what you were dreaming about, only that it involved bread, a misplaced broom, and somebody repeatedly insisting that apples can predict the weather. Medieval dreams come with their own peculiar logic. When you finally open your eyes, the darkness has shifted yet again. It's no longer the midnight black of deep night, nor the velvety gloom of second sleep's beginning. Instead, the room holds a faint, bluish tint, the earliest whisper of approaching dawn, so delicate you could almost miss it if you weren't looking directly at the window. You lie still, listening. Someone beside you breathes in a slow, heavy rhythm. Another person snuffles softly, then falls quiet. A child shifts closer to the warmth of an adult. The entire bed is a gentle tide of bodies rising and falling with every breath. You're tucked between them, wrapped in the heavy wool blanket like a quiet passenger in a shared dream. Your shoulder itches. You scratch it quietly. The mattress sighs. The dog at the hearth gives a soft grunt, adjusting itself into what is clearly a position of absolute, canine luxury. You envy the dog's confidence. You stretch one leg cautiously, testing the mattress landscape. Still lumpy, still unpredictable, yet somehow more tolerable now that your body has surrendered to the night's rhythm. You sit up slowly, blanket pooling in your lap. The cool air brushes your neck, reminding you that warmth has become a communal resource. You wrap your cloak around your shoulders again, letting it settle with the comforting weight of familiarity. You stand, easing your way out of the bed's gravitational pull, and move across the room on tiptoes. The floorboards creak softly, a tiny protest. You pause. No one wakes. You continue. At the hearth, the embers are almost entirely gone, just a faint shimmer hiding beneath the ash. You crouch and blow gently. A single orange vein glows in response, like a sleepy creature lifting its head. It's not enough to build a fire, but it's a reminder that warmth existed here once, and will return at dawn. Here's your major historical fact for this section. Medieval mornings often depended on whether the fire survived the night. If embers remained, the hearthkeeper, usually the woman of the household, could revive the fire quickly. If not, starting from scratch meant flint, steel, tinder, and patience. And patience before breakfast is a heroic trait. You sit back on your heels and glance toward the window. The shutter still leaks, a thin blade of light, not bright, not warm, but different. A new kind of dark. You walk toward it and lift the shutter just half an inch. Cold air slips in instantly, carrying the smell of frost and distant chimney smoke. The sky outside is a pale, milky blue. Still night, but the kind of night that's remembering morning exists. You rest your forehead against the wooden frame and breathe in deeply. The world out there is still asleep, but it's shifting, stirring. A rooster crows somewhere far off once, then again, as if unsure whether it's contractually obligated to be awake yet. You close the shutter gently and turn back to the room. The dog lifts its head and looks at you through sleepy eyes. It yawns with theatrical intensity, then collapses onto its side as if the act was unbearably exhausting. You smile. Dogs have always been committed to overperforming in the realm of sleep. You step toward the small kitchen corner again, careful not to bump into the wooden stool that lurks like a trap in the shadows. You run your fingers over the table. A thin layer of flour dusts the surface evidence of last night's meal preparations or someone's midnight snack ambitions. Something catches your eye. A wooden jar with a lid carved from a darker wood. You open it. Inside is coarse salt, precious, valuable, carefully rationed. Here's your obscure cultural tidbit. Many medieval households believed salt left uncovered overnight would attract spirits or thieves, so they capped it tightly, sometimes even tying the lid with twine for extra protection. Salt wasn't just seasoning, it was wealth, preservation, and superstition in one tiny mineral crystal. You close the jar with equal care and place it back where it belongs. The house rustles, someone stretching, another shifting, a blanket sliding across straw with a whisper. Second, sleep is ebbing. You can feel it in the air, in the rhythm of breathing, in the faint glow of the window. Historians still debate how predictable this transition was, whether people woke gradually like this every night, or whether it varied with season, temperature, and household routine. But right now, the timing feels perfect, natural, as if dawn has invited the house to begin thinking about waking. You sit on the stool and fold your hands in your lap. The cloak around you holds what little warmth the room offers. Your eyelids grow heavy once more. For a moment, you consider lying down again, sinking back into the last remnants of second sleep. You decide against it. Not because you're fully awake, far from it, but because there's something calming about watching the house stir while the world outside slowly emerges from darkness. You stay still, soaking in the muted symphony of soft breaths and shifting straw. The night isn't over yet. The dawn hasn't arrived yet. You're floating in the thin, delicate space between them, the quiet hour where the world inhales before it begins again. You sit quietly on the stool, wrapped in your cloak, while the faint blue-grey light outside begins to gently nudge the world awake. It isn't dawn yet, not properly, but the night is thinning. You can feel it in the air, in your skin, in the soft stirring of the people around you. Second sleep is beginning its slow retreat, loosening its hold like a hand releasing a rope. Behind you, someone exhales sharply, then falls still. Another person rolls over, creating a soft wave in the shared mattress. The blanket shifts like a breathing animal. You glance back for a moment, taking in the gentle chaos of shared sleep. A tangle of limbs, wool, breath, hair, and warmth. Strange, intimate, endearing, in a way modern bedrooms rarely replicate. Your body is waking up, but your thoughts remain dreamlike, drifting from one idea to the next with no particular loyalty. You think about the watchman's lantern, the frost on rooftops, the feel of warm river stones, the judgmental mouse, the goat's offended bleat. They all float together in a strange, sleepy collage. You stand slowly, stretching your arms overhead until your shoulders give a satisfying crack. The house reacts to your movement with its usual commentary, creaking beams, whispering straw, that one eternally complaining floorboard. The house isn't waking yet, but it's aware of you. You move to the hearth again and crouch low. The embers are gone now, nothing but ash layered like grey snow. A cold hearth wasn't a tragedy. It just meant someone needed to relight it soon. Preferably someone who was more awake and more patient than you currently are. Here's your major historical fact for this section. In many regions, people lit their morning fires using fire preservation pots, small earthen containers where a smouldering coal from the previous day was kept alive under ash. These weren't perfect systems, but they helped households avoid the labor of sparking new fire from stone each morning. Losing the preservation pot overnight meant starting from scratch, frustrating, time-consuming, and definitely not how anyone wanted to begin their day. You stand and wrap your cloak tighter around your shoulders. The cold feels heavier now, clinging to your skin like a persistent thought. You walk toward the window and lift the shutter a little more. Cold air slips inside, but this time the breeze carries hints of something new, something soft, something distant. The sky is no longer uniform. Faint streaks of pale grey mix with deeper blue. Dawn is still hiding behind the horizon, but its messenger has arrived. You lean closer, watching the sky shift in tiny, almost invisible increments. In this era, mornings didn't begin with alarms or bright screens. They began with the slow, patient work of light painting itself into existence. You close the shutter halfway and turn back into the room. The dog has noticed the temperature drop and is repositioning its entire existence. It circles twice, then plops down with the dramatic sigh of a creature who has never suffered a true hardship. You give it a fond scratch behind the ear. The dog yawns again, big, loud, unapologetic. You move toward the small wooden chest again and open it quietly. Inside, tucked between folded garments, is a small cloth pouch. You pick it up and untie the simple knot. Inside are dried beans, smooth and cool against your fingertips. Enough for a small stew later. Enough to remind you how carefully medieval households rationed their food. You close the pouch and return it to the chest. Everything in this room feels purposeful, necessary. Nothing wasted, nothing decorative for the sake of decoration. In a world without electric light or excess, objects had to earn their place. Here's your obscure cultural tidbit. In some parts of Europe, families believed that beans were spiritually powerful. They were associated with the souls of the dead and were avoided on certain nights of the year. On other nights, they were thought to offer protection. The meaning shifted with region, season, and whose grandmother you asked. You stand again, letting your mind drift. The quiet of the room wraps around you. The faint light filters in. Your breathing falls into a slow rhythm. Historians still debate how long this pre-dawn transitional period lasted, and how consistently people woke during it. But standing here now, hearing the house's muted chorus of snores, sighs, creaks, and shifting straw, you understand the rhythm of it. The night was not a single block of darkness. It was layered. You look toward the bed one last time. The family sleeps, deeply and peacefully. You feel a tug of warmth, an affection for these strangers of the past, these ordinary people who navigated the night without electricity, alarms, or lamps brighter than a candle stub. Your eyes feel heavy again, not with sleep this time, but with a calm settling over you. You walk back to the stool and sit, letting the quiet hum of the house envelop you. The sky outside lightens bit by bit. The night is shifting, the world is stretching, and dawn is almost ready to step across the threshold. You sit on the stool, wrapped in your cloak, as the sky outside continues its slow drift toward morning. The blue-grey tint has deepened, spreading across the window like watercolor seeping through paper. It's still early, so early that dawn hasn't yet claimed its colors, but something in the air has changed. The night is loosening its grip. Behind you, the bed begins its subtle stirrings again. A child shifts. Someone lets out a half snore, half sigh. Another sleeper curls tighter into the blanket, as if bargaining with the morning for just a few more minutes. The dog lifts its head, gives the room a single suspicious glance, and flops back down like a creature deeply offended at being awake. You stand slowly, stretching your arms upward. Your joints complain with soft pops, the soundtrack of a body that has slept on straw instead of memory foam. Your breath clouds faintly in the air as you exhale. The chill feels sharper now, not because the temperature has dropped, but because your body is beginning to wake enough to notice it. You decide to move toward the door, stepping on careful feet across the uneven boards. At the latch, you pause. A faint rustle outside suggests something is awake, an animal, wind, or the lingering spirit of someone's poorly folded laundry. You lift the latch anyway and push the door open. Cold morning air rushes in with a brisk greeting. You step outside into the half-dark, pulling the cloak tighter around your shoulders. The village is still swallowed by shadow, but now the shadows look softer like velvet instead of ink. The sky has a faint pale stripe near the horizon, delicate as a brushstroke. You walk slowly down the narrow lane, memorizing the sounds of this fragile hour. A rooster crows in the distance, not the assertive, confident kind of crow that announces sunrise, but the confused, early attempt of a rooster who isn't quite sure if dawn is truly coming or if it dreamed the whole thing. Here's your major historical fact for this section. Before mechanical clocks became widespread, animals, especially roosters, were reliable cues for the shifting of night into day. Farmers paid close attention to these early bird calls, using them to gauge time long before church bells or clock towers standardized morning routines. You smile softly as the rooster tries again, louder this time, as if rehearsing for the main event. You step further into the village square. Frost clings to the edges of the well, shimmering faintly in the weak light. Your breath puffs out before you, swirling into the chill like a tiny ghost chasing freedom. On a low fence nearby, a bundle of cloth catches your attention. You approach it and realize it's a piece of linen left out to dry. Except it didn't dry. It froze instead, stiff as a board, standing like a sculpture someone carved out of ice and fabric. You tap it gently. It makes a hollow, frozen thup sound. You laugh quietly into your cloak. Here's your obscure cultural tidbit. Villagers sometimes left laundry outside overnight during winter because they believed freeze-drying killed certain pests. Whether this worked scientifically is questionable, but the practice was common enough that frozen shirts, socks, and undergarments became an unofficial morning art exhibit. You leave the linen sculpture where it stands and continue down the lane. The houses, crouched together in their night shapes, begin to reveal their edges, slanted roofs, crooked chimneys, wooden beams that look like they've leaned on each other for centuries. The sky brightens another shade. You turn your face toward it, letting the faint morning breeze touch your cheeks. It smells of earth, frost, smoke, and possibility. The kind of scent that convinces even the sleepiest farmer to rise. As you walk, you hear a soft creak, someone shifting inside a nearby house. A baby makes a tiny fussing sound. Somewhere else, a cow lows quietly, as if muttering to itself about the indignity of mornings. You smile at the growing chorus. Historians still debate whether dawn routines in small villages were synchronized or staggered, but this moment feels like a communal inhale, everyone waking not at the same time, but in the same rhythm. You lean against a wooden post and close your eyes for a moment, letting the cool breeze brush your face. Your body is awake, but your mind still holds traces of the night's softness, the quiet, the contemplation, the strange peace of a world lit only by fire and sky. You take one more long breath, then you turn back toward the house, ready to slip inside before the real morning begins. Because the night has one last thin layer left, and you're not done walking through it yet. You return toward the house, your feet brushing softly against the cold stones as the village slowly inhales the first hints of morning. The sky overhead is still mostly dark, but no longer the endless, infinite dark of midnight. Instead, it holds a faint, silvery wash, like someone diluted the night with a few drops of dawn and stirred gently. You reach the door and ease it open. The room greets you with a quiet warmth, even though the air inside is cold. The warmth here isn't from fire, since the hearth hasn't yet been revived, but from bodies, breath, and the shared shelter of wooden walls. A kind of warmth that comes from existing together. You close the door softly behind you and stand still for a moment, letting your eyes adjust to the dim interior. The family is still asleep, but they've begun their slow shift into waking. One person stretches an arm up unconsciously. Another curls deeper into the blanket. The dog raises an eyebrow at you, yawns so wide you can almost hear its soul stretching, then settles its snout back onto its paws. You move toward the hearth and crouch down. It's fully cold now, no embers, no hopeful glow, just a bed of grey ash, faintly patterned from last night's coals. You stir it gently with a stick, watching the ash swirl like soft winter dust. You'll need new fire soon, but not yet. Not while night still lingers. You stand again and move to the table. The wooden surface is rough beneath your fingertips, etched with small nicks and scratches from years of meals, chores, and hurried evening tasks. You pick up the cup and sip what's left of last night's water, cool and slightly metallic. It wakes your tongue more effectively than you expect. You sit on the stool once more, cloak wrapped around your shoulders, and watch the room from this small perch. Here's your major historical fact for this section. Before mechanical clocks, families tracked the transition from night to dawn through subtle cues, changes in sky color, animal behavior, the temperature of the air, and the quiet shift in their own bodies. Medieval timekeeping was intuitive, almost biological, tied to the rhythms of nature instead of gears and bells. You glance toward the window slit. The faint blue-grey light returns, glowing just enough to outline the beams, the hanging herbs, the edges of the bed. The room begins to take shape again, not crisp or clear, but softened like a sketch in charcoal. Your eyes wander to the herbs swaying gently overhead. Lavender, rosemary, thyme, and a few sprigs of something you still haven't identified. They whisper subtly in the draught, like half-awake storytellers stretching before their morning tales. You rise and walk to the small chest again, half out of curiosity, half out of something to do with your drifting thoughts. Inside, beneath the folded garments, you find a small leather pouch. You draw it out carefully and open it. Inside are several tiny objects, a wooden bead, a smooth shell, a coin so worn you can barely make out the markings. A simple collection, but meaningful. Tokens, keepsakes, maybe charms. Here's your obscure cultural tidbit. Medieval families often kept small talismans or pocket protections near their sleeping space. Little objects believed to bring luck, ward off illness, or encourage good dreams. These items were as personal as they were symbolic, passed down, traded, or tucked away quietly. You turn the coin in your fingers. It's smooth, cool, shaped by countless hands before yours. You return it gently to the pouch and place it back under the garments. Someone in the bed lets out a long stretch and a soft groan, the universal sound of a human reluctantly acknowledging the idea that morning might eventually happen. You smile. Their eyes stay closed, but their body has started the slow, sleepy negotiation between staying warm and accepting reality. You move toward the window again and open the shutter wider this time. The cold air greets you instantly, brushing your face with a chill that feels fresher than before. The sky outside is still blue-black, but brighter now, more blue than black. The village looks the same and yet different. Rooftops outlined more clearly, chimneys wearing caps of frost, the lane faintly visible in muted tones. You hear the soft, rhythmic swish of someone sweeping inside a distant house. An early riser beginning their day before the rest of the world opens its eyes. A rooster crows again, louder and more confident this time. This crow sounds official, like it has finally checked the sky and decided dawn is indeed coming. You pull the shutter closed gently, allowing the room to return to its half-dark, half-light hush. Historians still debate whether mornings in medieval villages felt peaceful or chaotic, but this moment, this quiet, suspended breath before dawn, feels undeniably peaceful. A rare pause, a soft, blue whisper of time. You sit back on the stool. The air inside holds its breath. The sleepers drift. The dog snores faintly. Morning approaches, but the night still clings lightly to the edges of the room. You close your eyes for a moment, letting yourself feel the balance between light and dark, between sleep and waking, between the cold world outside and the warm bodies inside. This is the last blue of night, a thin, beautiful layer between darkness and day. You open your eyes again not because you're fully awake, but because something in the world is shifting in a way you can feel before you can name. The room around you is still dim, still wrapped in the cool hush of pre-dawn, but there's a quiet alertness now, a soft anticipation, like the house is listening. You rise slowly from the stool, your cloak slipping around your shoulders with a gentle sway. The cold in the room bites a little more sharply now, reminding you that the fire has given up entirely and dawn hasn't yet offered its warmth in exchange. Still, there's something comforting about this. The moment the world at its emptiest, waiting to be filled. Behind you, the family begins to stir again. Someone shifts their legs. Someone else sniffs once, then pulls the blanket closer. A sleepy voice murmurs something unintelligible, possibly a dream complaint, possibly a reminder about soaking peas. In medieval life, most topics were fair game for early morning mumbling. You move toward the hearth out of habit, even though you know it's cold. The ash is pale and soft beneath your fingers, like grey flour. You brush it aside in a small circle and uncover the hard stone beneath. It's cool and smooth. For a brief moment, you imagine how many mornings began exactly like this, crouched by the hearth, breath curling in the cold air, the day waiting to be shaped by the first spark. Here's your major historical fact for this section. Many medieval households began their day with chores before the sun was up. Bakers, farmers, shepherds, and brewers often woke in the dark to knead dough, tend animals, rekindle fires, and prepare tools. The day respected the sun, but work respected necessity. You stand and listen. The village outside has begun its quiet awakening too. A distant door creaks open. Soft footsteps cross frosty ground. A muted cough echoes from a neighboring house. No one speaks loudly yet. Voices are still caught in the gentleness of dawn's edge. You step toward the window and open the shutter again. Cold air rushes in with more confidence, this time not the sharp bite of midnight, but the brisk clarity of early morning preparing its stage. The sky has shifted again, offering a pale wash of color over the rooftops. The earliest hint of dawn's palette, soft blues, faint grays, a whisper of washed-out pink. The air smells different now, more alive, frost, earth. A hint of smoke from a hearth already revived somewhere nearby. Maybe the baker's oven. Maybe an early rising mother tenderly coaxing warmth from reluctant kindling. You turn and walk toward the kitchen corner. Your feet brush against the stool lightly this time, a near miss instead of a shin-threatening disaster. You run your fingers over the wooden table again, feeling the familiar texture in the growing light. Something catches your eye. A small pot covered with cloth. You lift the cloth. Inside is dough, simple, heavy, slightly risen even in the cold. Someone must have prepared it last night, relying on the quiet hours to finish the proofing. You smile softly. Bread isn't just food. It's a rhythm, a ritual, a daily anchor. Here's your obscure cultural tidbit. Medieval families often left dough out overnight specifically because the slow, cool rise created better texture. People even believed that the spirits of the house or the coolness of the night improved the bread's temperament. Whether or not that's true, the dough before you looks patient and ready. You cover it again gently and move back toward the center of the room. The dog stretches once, more long, deliberate, dramatic, and then trots slowly across the room to inspect you. Its nails click softly on the wood. It sniffs your cloak, yawns audibly in your face, and sits down with the resigned dignity of a creature who knows breakfast is coming but refuses to look too eager. You give it a gentle pat. You walk to the bed and observe the shifting limbs and soft groans of waking humans. Someone rubs their eyes. Someone else pulls the blanket over their head, trying to negotiate with the morning like it's a stubborn mule. The child curls into a ball, clinging to the last bits of warmth. No one is fully awake yet, but they're close. Historians still debate how routine mornings truly were in medieval households. Some families rose quickly. Others moved through the early light slowly, letting tasks draw them out of sleep at their own pace. But standing here now, you feel that balance between urgency and gentleness. You sit on the stool once again, letting your breath warm your hands. The cloak hugs your shoulders. The faint morning breeze sneaks under the door, curling around your feet. You close your eyes for a moment, not to sleep, but to feel the room. Breaths deepen. The light shifts. The world hums with quiet readiness. This is the hour when tasks wake before people. When the day stretches its fingers, while the village stretches its limbs. A fragile moment, soft, cold, and beautifully slow, and you are sitting right in the center of it. The room brightens by just a hair, enough that the edges of the rafters sharpen. The herbs hanging from the beams look a little more alive, and the straw mattress begins to show its uneven texture in the pale. Early light. You're no longer surrounded by darkness. You're surrounded by something gentler, something that feels halfway between shadow and sky. You stand slowly from the stool, letting your cloak fall around your shoulders like a heavy woolen exhale. Behind you, the bed shifts again as the family begins to wander, reluctantly, back toward consciousness. A sleepy groan from one corner, a soft cough from another. A child mumbles a sentence you absolutely cannot decode. You take a step toward the door. The cold boards on the floor pinch your feet slightly, but you've grown unexpectedly accustomed to the temperature swings of medieval architecture. You open the door just enough to step outside and breathe in the air. The village has changed. Not fully awake, but no longer asleep. The sky overhead holds a soft gradient, deeper blue, bleeding into a faint, delicate wash of grey. The shapes of houses sharpen in the dim light. Roof lines, chimneys, stacked firewood, worn door frames that have greeted centuries of mornings. You step out onto the lane and feel the crunch of frost beneath your feet. The sound is soft, brittle, satisfying. A thin layer of ice crystals coats the stones, glowing faintly like crushed stars scattered underfoot. Here's your major historical fact for this section. Medieval mornings often began with specific sounds rather than specific hours. Before clocks, people rose with roosters, with livestock, with the first shift in birdsong, with the faint light that spilled across rooftops. The day began when the world signaled it never, when a number on a dial demanded it. You keep walking, letting your feet follow the familiar path through the village center. You hear the distant hum of someone sweeping their threshold. A single, rhythmic swish. The baker's oven creaks. A bucket clinks against a well beam. These are the earliest instruments of the village's morning symphony, quiet, functional, steady. As you pass the well, you see a faint swirl of steam rising, where someone splashed water earlier. The wood around it gleams with frozen droplets, catching the new light. The bucket hangs still, stiff with frost but ready for use. Everything about this hour feels suspended, like the village is taking a long, deliberate breath before it exhales into the day. You look toward the fields beyond the last house. The ground is blanketed in a thin frost that glimmers with the faintest hint of dawn's pearly glow. A lone figure walks across the edge of a field, carrying a bucket in each hand, likely a farmer checking livestock before sunrise. Even from this distance, you can hear the soft clank of metal against the cold morning air. You follow the lane back toward the market square. The empty stalls now appear more defined. Cloth coverings stiff with frost, wooden beams casting long, faint shadows. A cart sits abandoned but expectant, as though the day has already placed a claim on its wheels. Something moves near one of the stalls. A cat, possibly the same judgmental one from last night, hops onto a wooden beam and sits there, tail curled neatly around its paws. It stares at you with the early morning look of someone who knows more about last night than they'll ever confess. Cats have always had that expression. You nod respectfully. The cat blinks slowly, as if granting you permission to continue existing. Then it resumes staring down the lane with mysterious purpose. You turn and make your way back toward the house. The sky is brightening at a pace so slow it feels deliberate. Dawn is no longer a possibility, it's a promise, waiting just beneath the horizon. You step back inside and close the door gently behind you. The warmth from human bodies and blankets greets you instantly. The dog, now fully aware that morning might be close, sits up and gives you a hopeful look, the kind that suggests breakfast negotiations should begin immediately. You pat its head, then move toward the hearth. You kneel and begin arranging bits of kindling, dry twigs, small sticks, scraps of bark into a careful structure. Your fingers work slowly in the dim light, guided by memory more than sight. Someone finally speaks. A soft, groggy voice from the bed. Is it morning yet? Before you can answer, someone else mutters, "No," and promptly turns over, burrowing deeper under the blanket. You smile. Historians still debate whether medieval mornings were cheerful or grumpy affairs. Judging by this room, the answer seems to be both. You lean toward the hearth and strike flint against steel. Once, twice. A tiny spark jumps, catches the edge of a twig, flares briefly, then vanishes. You try again. Another spark. This time it lingers, threading through the bark until a small flame curls upward. You feed it gently. Slowly. Carefully. The fire grows. The room brightens just a little more. You sit back, watching as warmth begins to spread in tiny, deliberate waves. Someone groans again. Someone else yawns. The room is waking in layers, soft, slow, stubborn. Outside, the sky continues to brighten. Inside, the fire breathes into life. And the village, at last, is beginning its long, quiet inhale. The small flame in the hearth grows with each gentle breath of kindling. You sit back on your heels, watching it unfurl into the cold morning air, like a timid creature stretching after a long sleep. The fire crackles softly, quiet, polite, almost apologetic for its absence during the night. But even this small glow is enough to shift the room's mood. Behind you, the family begins their slow, reluctant awakening. Someone reaches out blindly for warmth, finds the empty space where you used to be, and groans in disappointment. Another person sits up halfway, eyes closed, hair sticking out in defiance of gravity and grooming alike. They make the universal sound of a human who has not yet agreed to participate in the day. The dog, now fully committed to the idea that breakfast is imminent, trots to the hearth and sits beside you, gazing deeply into the flame, as if attempting to understand fire on a spiritual level. You stand, brushing ash from your hands, and take in the room with the soft light of the new fire. The beams overhead glow faintly. The herbs hanging from them take on richer color, greens and purples, sharpening like details in a waking dream. The walls warm into amber tones. The straw mattress looks less lumpy and more, well, tolerable. You move to the table and pull back the cloth covering the dough you checked earlier. It has risen just a bit more, despite the cold, forming soft, tiny bubbles along its cracked surface. Here's your major historical fact for this section. Medieval bread was often the first task of the morning. Households mixed dough the night before and baked it in the earliest hours, sometimes in communal ovens shared between families. Fresh bread wasn't a luxury, it was a necessity and a daily ritual. You knead the dough gently, folding it over itself, feeling its cool, soft resistance beneath your fingers. The process feels grounding, ancient, familiar. Your hands move with the natural rhythm of tasks humans have done for 1,000 years. As you work, someone behind you sits up fully and yawns loudly, so loudly it seems to shake dust from the rafters. You don't turn around, but you can sense the room settling into a pattern. The quiet chaos of waking bodies, the shuffling of blankets being gathered, the coughs of people clearing the remnants of sleep from their lungs. A small voice, sleepy and confused, asks, "Is it day?" You glance at the window. The sky is still grey-blue, but brighter now. No sun yet, no gold, but there's enough light to see clearly without fire. "Almost," you whisper. The child seems satisfied with this answer and curls back onto the warmest portion of the bed. You finish kneading and form the dough into a round loaf, setting it aside to rest a little longer. The dog watches with great interest, convinced this process is entirely about him. You step toward the window and open the shutter wide. Cold, bright air floods the room. The sky outside is alive with the faintest blush of early morning, the tiniest hint of warm color just beginning to seep into the clouds. The village stands sharper now, rooftops rimmed with frost, a thin line of smoke rising from a neighbor's chimney, the distant silhouette of someone leading a cow from its shed. You inhale deeply. The air is cold enough to sting, but fresh enough to wake you completely. You close the shutter partially to keep the draft manageable. Someone behind you finally swings their legs over the edge of the bed, feet hitting the floor with the resigned thump of a person who has accepted their fate. Another stands up and pulls on a wool tunic, hair sticking out in all directions. The child sits up and rubs their eyes vigorously, then promptly falls backward into the blanket again. Here's your obscure cultural tidbit. In some regions, families whispered a short blessing or small good luck phrase upon waking, believing it protected the household for the day ahead. Simple things, like "God keep the hearth warm" or "let the day be gentle." Some families even greeted the fire itself, as if it were an old friend. You whisper something similar without meaning to, just a quiet, instinctive greeting to the warmth growing in the hearth. The room brightens more. The fire pops softly. Someone laughs once, quietly, at something you can't see. The morning is coming alive in small, gentle ways. Historians still debate whether mornings in medieval homes were peaceful or chaotic, but right now, The room feels balanced, half-asleep bodies learning to be awake, half-awake flames learning to be bright. You sit back on the stool, letting the warmth brush your knees, feeling the air shift from cold breath to human breath, from night's stillness to morning's hum. The day is not fully here yet, but the village is breathing in, and soon it will exhale into morning. The room continues its slow transformation as the earliest strands of morning weave themselves through the shutters. Light shifts from blue-grey to something softer, like warm milk poured into ink. Not bright yet, not golden, but undeniably morning. The house feels it. The people feel it. Even the dog feels it, which is saying something, because dogs traditionally refuse to acknowledge anything before breakfast. You stand from the stool, stretching your arms until your shoulders give a satisfying roll. The cloak around you settles like a second skin. The warmth from the hearth has grown, filling the room with a gentle, crackling hum. Little by little, the cold retreats from the corners. Behind you, the family fully begins their ascent into wakefulness. Someone pushes the blanket aside with a groan that sounds like a medieval expression of existential dread. A child crawls across the bed, hair sticking out like a small haystack with opinions. Another person rubs their face vigorously, as if attempting to scrub sleep itself off their skin. You turn and greet them with a small nod, though no one is quite alert enough to return it. You move back toward the table where the dough rests, now plump, soft, and ready. You dust your hands with flour, shaping it with care. Its cool, smooth surface responds easily under your palms. Outside, a faint murmur of voices rises, neighbors calling quietly to each other, the beginnings of daily conversation drifting across the still chilly air. Here's your major historical fact for this section. Medieval mornings often began with shared sounds. Nearly every home, workshop, stable, or field came alive at roughly the same time. No engines, no alarms, just human voices, animal noises, and the steady rhythm of tools beginning their day. You wrap the dough and set it near the hearth to warm before baking. The dog sniffs it with great hope. You give it a gentle nudge. Hope is free, but bread is not. You walk to the door and open it again, letting the morning air seep into the house. The sky has deepened into a misty, pale blue. Clouds glow faintly, brushed with the softest hints of pink. The world looks as though someone painted it with cold pastels. Your breath forms small clouds in front of you as you step just outside. A woman down the lane sweeps her doorstep, her broom scratching lightly across the frozen ground. A man carries a bucket of water toward his animals. A youth ties a bundle of kindling at the hip, ready to face the day's chores. Everyone moves slowly, gently, with that half-tired, half-determined energy that mornings demand in every century. You spot the watchman from the night, now finishing his patrol, lantern extinguished. He stretches his arms overhead, bones cracking in a way that echoes your own earlier stretch. He nods at you, a quiet acknowledgement between those who witnessed the night from its earliest darkness to its softest morning. You nod back. A raven perched on a fence post tilts its head, assessing the village as though evaluating whether anyone will drop food soon. Its glossy feathers catch the new light, turning its silhouette into a stark piece of living ink. You step back inside the house, where the family is now mostly awake. Someone is pulling on woolen stockings. Someone else is folding blankets. The child is already attempting to steal the dog's attention with clumsy affection. The dog, delighted, accepts. A woman begins to speak softly, a gentle morning greeting. Her voice is roughened by sleep, but warm. A man responds with something that sounds like, which is likely the medieval equivalent of good morning, but give me a minute. You move toward the hearth again to add another small piece of wood. The flames catch on the dry bark quickly, brightening into an amber glow that fills the room. Here's your obscure cultural tidbit. Some medieval families greeted the fire each morning as if it were a living member of the household. They believed the hearth spirit needed warmth, gratitude, or whispered blessings to keep the home protected. Fire wasn't just heat, it was luck, safety, and continuity. You whisper a small greeting to it yourself, not because you believe the flame requires it, but because the quiet ritual feels peaceful. Historians still debate whether people romanticized mornings or just endured them, but right now, the room holds a simplicity that feels like a soft, old truth. A truth that dawn doesn't arrive in a single moment. It seeps in through shutters, through breath, through cracks in wood and cracks in sleep. The light grows, the room brightens, the day steadies, and you stand in the doorway between night and morning, feeling the world rise around you slow, warm, and full of quiet expectation. There is more to see as the sun prepares its first touch. You remain near the doorway, feeling the subtle swell of the morning deepen with every passing breath. The air inside the house warms just a little more as the fire gathers confidence in the hearth. Outside, the sky shifts again, its faint blue turning softer, its hints of pink growing bolder, its edges brightening like a promise clearing its throat. Someone behind you yawns with such spectacular drama that even the dog looks impressed. The family is now unmistakably awake. Not fully functional yet, but awake. Blankets are being folded, hair is being flattened, sleepy faces scrubbed with cold water. A child chases the dog in slow, uncoordinated circles. The dog tolerates this with the patience of a creature who has survived children for many winters. You step outside again, letting the cold, the morning, settle onto your skin like a thin frost. The village is no longer pretending to wake, it is waking. Soft voices drift over the square, chickens scratch at patches of earth, offended by the thin crust of frost coating everything. A cow lows somewhere behind a barn, announcing her presence as only cows can. With stubborn, echoing authority, you lift your gaze. And there it is. The first true light of day. Not big, not bright, not yet, but unmistakable. A pale, golden wash spreads across the horizon, gentle as a warm hand brushing over the land. The sun has not cleared the rooftops, but its glow has. The world breathes a little easier with that touch. Here's your major historical fact for this section. Sunrise often dictated the official start of the medieval workday. Bells rang, gates opened, markets began setting up, fires were stoked, and households sprang into activity. Time wasn't kept by numbers, it was kept by light. You walk forward into the lane, feeling the frost crunch beneath your feet in soft, crisp beats. Each step sounds like a tiny crack of glass. Your breath wisps before you in faint clouds as the air warms by degrees. As you turn toward the market square, movement catches your eye. A merchant pulls aside the cloth from his stall and begins unloading baskets of goods, some dried herbs, some onions, a few apples that have definitely seen better days. He nods to you, bleary-eyed but cordial. You return the nod. A woman carrying a wooden bucket walks past you, her breath puffing in rhythmic bursts. She offers a brief good morning gesture with her free hand. Behind her, two boys tumble out of a doorway, already arguing about something vitally important, probably whose turn it is to check the chickens. You walk on, letting the scene settle comfortably around you. Then, as you reach the edge of the square, your foot bumps something soft. You look down, a cloth bundle, left near a doorstep, now frosted over. You kneel and peek beneath, the edge. Ah, vegetables. Likely traded last night or left as an offering of sorts between neighbours. Simple things, carrots, leeks, a turnip or two. Frost-dusted but usable. Here's your obscure cultural tidbit. Early mornings were often prime time for quiet exchanges between households. People left food, messages, or small gifts at doorways before others woke, either to avoid awkwardness, maintain privacy, or simply because the day was too full for social pleasantries. You stand again, feeling the first real warmth of sunlight brushing your cheek as the sun finally peeks over the farthest rooftop. It's a soft warmth, not the full strength of day, but a glowing, gentle presence. The village responds instantly. A rooster crows triumphantly, as if to say, "Yes, now it counts." A woman in a doorway squints at the sky, sighs, and adjusts her shawl. A cartwheel creaks as someone begins to move it into place. The blacksmith's hammer rings once in the distance, a warm, metallic note announcing the day's beginning. You take a long breath. The night feels like a memory now, cool, slow, thoughtful. A place you walked through gently, a story that wrapped around you like a cloak of its own. The sun rises a little higher, brightening the frost until it sparkles in tiny bursts of light. The houses look warmer, the lane looks friendlier. The entire village stands in a soft, glowing mist, poised between waking and working. You turn back toward the house, where the family is now bustling quietly, one person tending the fire, another setting out wooden bowls. the child humming sleepily while trying to help with the dough you shaped. Historians still debate whether dawn brought relief or responsibility to medieval people, but in this moment, you feel both. Warmth and work, light and labor, rest ending and the day beginning. You step back inside, letting the sunlight follow behind you through the door. Morning has finally arrived, soft, golden, and devout, carrying the world forward. And there is still more to live through before the day truly begins. The sunlight creeps further into the house now, slipping across the floorboards like a curious guest. It reaches the edge of the hearth first, warming the stones there, then slowly crawls toward the table where the dough waits under its cloth. The room fills with a soft amber glow, the kind that makes even the coldest morning feel like it's offering a small apology. You move toward the hearth again, its flames now strong enough to give off steady warmth. The family has gathered around it in varying levels of consciousness. Someone is tying their hair back with quick, practiced motions. The child is still half wrapped in their blanket, rubbing their eyes with both fists. The dog sits nearest to the fire, soaking in the heat like a creature who has decided this is the best moment in the history of mornings. You take the dough and shape it gently, then place it onto a flat stone near the fire. The warmth will coax it into readiness for baking. The smell of yeast mingles with the scent of smoke and old wood, creating a quiet, homey aroma that fills the room. Someone hands you a small wooden cup of warm water. You sip it gratefully. The warmth moves through you slowly, waking your chest, your throat, your hands. A simple comfort with surprisingly deep roots. Here's your major historical fact for this section. Medieval breakfasts were modest bread, small ale, porridge, if there was enough grain, sometimes cheese or leftover stew. Breakfast wasn't a feast. It was fuel, a practical beginning to a day of physical labor. You watch as a woman ladles a small portion of thick barley porridge from a pot that has been resting near the fire. The child receives the first bowl, blowing on it with exaggerated theatrics. The adults eat with quiet focus, not rushed, not leisurely, just present. You take a bowl when it's offered. The porridge is warm, earthy, simple. It tastes like morning in a world without electricity. Honest, grounding, made from the hands that stirred it and the field that grew it. A man sits beside you and murmurs a greeting. His voice is rough from sleep but kind. Someone else comments on the cold. Another complains lightly about a sore back from the straw mattress. The conversation is soft, gentle, still wrapped in the night's slow energy. You glance toward the window. The light is brighter now, turning the frost outside into a shimmering mosaic. You hear the blacksmith's hammer again, this time a steady rhythm. A horse snorts somewhere nearby. The morning chorus of the village has begun in full. The dog finishes a small scrap of bread. Someone slipped under the table and trots to the door, tail wagging with purpose. This is not enthusiasm for chores, this is the dog's daily patrol of interesting smells. A ritual of equal importance. You stand and step outside. The sun is over the rooftops now, its early rays cutting long shadows across the lane. The crisp air sparkles. A soft breeze carries the scent of smoke, hay, and the faint sweetness of morning dew. A woman a few houses down is hanging damp cloths across a line, steam rising from the fabric in the sunlight. A pair of boys walk past carrying pails, water sloshing rhythmically with their steps. Two older men chat near a cart, their voices low and steady, discussing weather, tools, or something equally dependable. You walk toward the well, listening to the creak of the rope as someone lowers a bucket into its depths. The splash echoes up from below, bright and sharp in the morning air. You help lift the bucket, the cold water dripping across your hands like melted glass. Here's your obscure cultural tidbit. Morning water was often believed to hold a particular purity ideal for cooking, washing, or even mild healing practices. Some families collected the first bucket of the day with small rituals, believing it carried good fortune. You carry a small portion back inside, handing it over to the woman tending the fire. She nods gratefully and pours it into a clay jug. The room is brighter now, more alive. The family moves with clearer purpose. Someone preparing tools, another arranging firewood, the child finally awake enough to join the tasks. Historians still debate how cheerful mornings truly were, but in this household, the day is beginning with a quiet, rhythmic grace. You sit on the stool again, only briefly, watching the fire, listening to footsteps in the lane, feeling the warmth of the bowl settle in your stomach. Morning has fully arrived, and with it, the first breath of a new day, one shaped by simple tasks, shared warmth, and the lingering softness of a night lived without electricity. The world is fully awake now, but there's still more to see as the day deepens. The morning has shed its thin, silver-blue softness, and now stands with real shape edges defined, colors awakening, sounds sharpening. You step outside again, letting the sunlight settle across your face. It's brighter now, though not warm, enough to chase away the cold entirely. Still, it feels like the world is ready, steadier, clearer, more awake. The village lane is alive with motion. Someone sweeps their doorstep with brisk strokes. Two boys carry a bundle of sticks between them, both insisting they're doing the harder part. A woman hurries past with a basket against her hip, nodding to you as she goes. The distant bleating of goats tells you one of them is probably stuck on something again. You walk forward, noticing how frost melts in streaks wherever sunlight brushes the stones. The rooftops, which sparkled earlier, now drip steadily, forming tiny icicles at their edges. You take a deep breath. Here's your major historical fact for this section. Morning hours in medieval life were some of the busiest. Without electricity, people relied on daylight for the majority of their work. Cooking, tending animals, mending tools, hauling water, preparing fields, spinning wool, baking bread. There was no luxury of staying indoors until mid-morning. Light was a resource as valuable as grain or firewood. You continue down the lane toward the fields. Farmers are already out, silhouettes bending over the soil, checking fences, scattering feed. Their movements are efficient but unhurried, shaped by weather and necessity rather than clocks. A donkey pulling a small cart clops past you, hooves clicking softly in the cold mud. The animal pauses, looks at you with an expression of mild judgment, then resumes walking. Donkeys have been giving humanity this same expression for thousands of years. It's oddly comforting. You walk toward the edge of the village, where a woman kneels near a pen full of chickens. She tosses feed in practiced arcs. The chickens react with chaotic enthusiasm, flapping and scrambling in a feathery storm. She glances up at you, eyebrows raised knowingly, as if to say, "Yes, this is my morning chaos. It chooses me." You smile and continue onward. Here's your obscure cultural tidbit. In some regions, people believed the first person to speak to the animals in the morning had to offer a blessing. Otherwise, the creatures might behave unpredictably all day. Whether this worked is unclear, but it's certain the animals enjoyed the attention. As you walk, you feel the sun rising higher. Shadows shrink, colors deepen. The fields turn from pale blue to muted gold. The chill still lingers, but a hopeful warmth begins to creep over the land. You pause near a wooden fence and rest your hands on the smooth, cold beam. A distant church bell rings a single note. Not an alarm, just a soft reminder to the village that the day has officially begun. Behind you, the market square begins to stir. Cloth coverings are drawn back. Goods appear on tables, coarse bread, fresh milk, jars of herbs, bundles of wool. The faint smell of baking floats on the air, carried on smoke and sunlight. The world hums with purpose now. Families move about with quiet coordination. Animals greet the morning with their own voices. Tools clink. Firewood splits. Snow melts on the roofs in thin, bright ribbons. Historians still debate whether medieval mornings felt peaceful or overwhelming. But from where you stand, the day holds a gentle steadiness, like a rhythm you can lean into without being pushed. You turn back toward the house. The fire inside glows warm through the doorway. The child waves at you with porridge still on their cheek. The dog barks once, excited that you returned as if you'd been gone for days. You step inside. The house feels different now, filled with the energy of morning, the promise of work, the familiar warmth of people beginning their day. You sit at the table, letting the sunlight reach you through the window. The night has fully faded. Only one chapter remains to close the story of what midnight was like before electricity, and how the world moved when darkness ruled the hours. You sit at the table as the room breathes with morning. The fire crackles steadily. The family moves around you, tidying blankets, sorting tools, preparing for the flow of the day. The child brings you a small wooden cup of water with great pride. The dog sits beside you like a furry guardian of breakfast crumbs. Outside, sunlight fills the village with soft golden clarity. The frost is nearly gone. Footsteps crisscross the square. A warm breeze stirs for the first time, carrying the faint scent of hay and wood smoke. The world that belonged wholly to darkness just hours ago now stands open and bright. You step outside once more, standing in the same lane where you walked under moonlight. Everything is recognizable but transformed. Night softened the world into a whisper. Morning shapes it into a song. Here's your major historical fact for this section. The medieval day was framed by natural light. People rose with dawn, worked until dusk, and used firelight sparingly at night. Midnight wasn't an interruption, it was part of a rhythm, a natural pause built into human life, before electricity changed the world forever. You walk toward the well again. The frost has melted, leaving the wood dark and wet. A woman draws water and greets you with a smile. You return it. The world feels warmer now, friendlier, more awake. Here's your obscure cultural tidbit. Some families believed that speaking or singing softly into the well at dawn ensured good fortune, as wells were thought to hold protective spirits, or at least echoes of prayers whispered during the night. You lean over the well one last time. The water below reflects the morning sky, pale and shimmering. You take a quiet moment to breathe in its cool stillness. Around you, the village continues its slow bloom into day. Tools clatter, voices rise, children laugh. Animals argue about absolutely everything. You walk back toward the house, feeling the full circle of the night completed. Every moment from the quiet ember glow at midnight to the golden tip of sunrise has shaped this experience. Historians still debate many details of medieval night, but what you've lived through here reveals the timeless truth. Night was slower, darker, quieter, more contemplative, more communal, more alive in ways modern people rarely encounter. You stand in the doorway one last time, the sun warming your face. Midnight before electricity wasn't frightening, it was intimate. A world wrapped in soft shadows and human breath. A time to think, to rest, to wander, to listen. A place where the smallest flame felt like a companion and the quiet felt like medicine. And now, as the day fully dawns, you carry the memory of that night like a warm stone tucked into your cloak. The world moves forward, but the night you walked through lingers gently, a story etched into the quiet places of the heart. The morning continues to brighten around you, but rather than urging you into activity, it invites you into stillness, as if the world understands that your journey through the night has softened your senses and slowed your thoughts in a way that deserves to linger. You step away from the doorway and find a comfortable place to sit, letting the warmth of the rising sun wash gently over your face, your hands, your tired, night-softened mind. The sounds of the waking village drift around you in a muted haze. Distant voices carried on the breeze, the low murmur of animals greeting the day, the gentle tapping of tools beginning their quiet conversations with work. But all of it feels far away, softened by the calm that still clings to you from the long walk through darkness. You breathe in slowly, letting the cool early air settle in your chest, imagining it filling you with the same quiet patience that guided the village through the night. Each breath seems to stretch a little longer than the last, a little deeper, a little more peaceful, as though your body remembers the still moments beside the hearth, the hush of the streets beneath, moonlight, and the gentle touch of the first blue hours before dawn. The warmth of the new day begins to settle onto your shoulders, loosening every muscle, softening the edges of your thoughts until they drift like thin clouds across a brightening sky. If your eyes grow heavy, let them. If your body eases downward into rest, allow it. There is nothing to hold on to here except the calm, nothing to chase, nothing to solve. The night has carried you this far, offering its softness and silence, and now the morning is here to catch you gently, wrapping you in light the way the village wrapped you in darkness. You can let the story fade behind you like a lantern dimming at dawn, warm and steady, guiding you into a deeper quiet. And as you drift, imagine the sun rising slowly across a quiet field, warming every surface, brightening every shadow, easing the world into its day, and easing you into peaceful, unhurried rest.